Let's see. All right, so I want to start off by quickly recapping where we left off in the last meeting on Monday. So we talked about our progress in terms of development. Last week, on Monday, we had all the tasks in green here we had completed. So we had a basic setup of the three components, each doing their own tasks. Completed. Now, the next step is actually setting up a deployment spec and writing the Kubernetes YAMLs for that. On parallelly, we are also developing the sample provisioner, which will be used for testing and to show the demo as well. And for any other purpose that we'll need a sample provisioner, say even for new provisioners that others are implementing, this will serve as the example. Now, as of today, like I said, the work has begun on the sample provisioner implementation. We have just started out with it. We have established the CLI for it and implemented the first gRPC call for provisioners, which is the provisioner get info. And the next step will be implementing provisioner create bucket. We haven't gotten there yet. And once that is done, we can take all the deployment specs and actually deploy it and test them out as a single unit that is end-to-end. Before we move forward with further development, it is important that we set up a test infra, given that we have enough functionality now to test out one end-to-end scenario, which is create a bucket and mount in double quotes, mount the bucket into a pod. So I want to first find out what kind of setup we'll need, or what kind of work we'll need to do in order to complete this E2E test infra setup. So, for instance, we're going to need some sort of testing framework to do this. In Kubernetes itself, I believe Jinko is being used. Since we haven't started out with it at all, I'm open to suggestions on if anyone has experience here having written E2E tests or worked on the framework itself. You can let me know now. Okay, so yeah, we can do some research and figure out if Jinko is still the best way to go forward with writing the framework for it. Ideally, we're going to need a separate repository which will utilize some one of the test infra frameworks and it'll run on every pull request ideally. So once we establish the testing framework, we need a mechanism to auto deploy, in the sense we need a mechanism to test out a change where all the three components are deployed and tested as one. Now, at first thought, I think every test, let's say we do it on every PR to, yeah, this is a question I have. So should we run these tests on every PR to every one of the components?
Yeah, it should, right? Ideally, when after you completely set it up, should run for every PR. So if you fail, then you should not get merged, right? That's the goal.
Right.
And then you can take a look of the existing
Mm-hmm.
testing framework for the E2 test, where we
Mm-hmm.
have that already for the PVCs.
I see.
Yeah, just to start with that.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I'm just thinking, because right now actually the CSI E2 tests are actually in tree, but right now I think you can't be adding those tests in tree yet because so right now this is provisional, right? I'm wondering
Mm-hmm.
if we need to have another repo for the test or because
I
this
think.
would be a test for all the, you have right now there are like 3 repos for
Mm-hmm.
Cozy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wonder if we need another repo just for all the E2 tests because yeah, so right now we can't be adding them in tree yet.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. Is the spec? I don't know if we can put it in the spec repo. The spec is supposed to.
Spec repo. What spec repo? Which one is the
Oh,
spec
don't
repo?
we have a? So we've created five repos or four so far.
4? Oh, okay. Maybe, yeah. I'm fine if you just pick one repo and add it there. I think that should be fine. Which one you're thinking?
So let me see. There are. Yeah, this is the one.
Oh, okay.
So this
Okay.
repository, yeah. So this repository is kind of a, like catch-all for the entire project.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing is, the purpose of spec is simply to just have the specification in it. I'm not sure if E2E tests belong here.
Yeah, normally it does not. This is like if you look at the container storage interface that, because the overall ETU test, you need to test the Kubernetes controller part, right? So that usually does not belong here.
Mhm.
Let's see, what are the other component you have? Provisioner interface controller.
No, so it's just the
This
cozy
is
interface is a.
okay.
I think the this controller might be okay to put it in.
Okay. Yeah, you can probably, I think it's fine just to start with that. And then in the future, once this become alpha, then we can move them in tree.
Yeah, that
Yeah, I
sounds
think
good.
that's maybe this, yeah, maybe this one. Otherwise the provisioner is like the driver, right? Is that
Sorry,
the
provisioner
provisioner? That's
sidecar.
like the driver, the sidecar.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I think it's fine. Put it in the cozy controller. I think it's fine for now. Yeah.
Hmm. And actually that might be better now that you mention it. I think if we have I'm not sure actually. If we have cozy provisioner for say S3, now that's where E2E test should be run, right?
Uh,
That's true. Or yeah,
okay.
we don't have to confuse it right now.
Mm-hmm.
My thought process was, um, in order to do the E2E test, we are going to need a driver regardless.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so the E2E test itself can reside in the driver repo. That's just the thought. We don't have to go through it right now, but we can just keep it in
Yeah.
the back of our minds. I think for now we can start with just the controller, and we'll go from there.
Right. So ideally, it should be run. You should run those tests across, but I think that probably will be like different tests. Yeah, I think it probably need to run different tests. But if you want to run end-to-end test, then that should be like the highest level
Hmm.
component, which is the provisioner?
That would be I mean, you can call it the controller in a sense.
The cozy controller, this one, the
Yeah,
container object storage
yeah, this one.
interface controller is the one. Okay, then maybe then you start there then.
Yeah,
So you
I
can,
think
I
that.
mean, you can put your test there, but if you look at how the CSI side E2 test is set up, actually we have those run in
Mhm.
each sidecar repo actually. So the tests are the E2E tests are submitted in tree. There is like a E2E test repo in
In which
tree
repo?
under Kubernetes under KK. And there is there are E2E tests. So yeah, so there are tests that are running in tree as part, whenever people
Oh, yeah, yeah.
submit some PR in KK, tests are running. But then we also have those run for the sidecars. We also have those run as well.
And you're saying there's something for site CSI here?
Yeah. If you go to storage, so all the sidecars are under the drivers. Yeah, so all the CSI tests are actually submitted here. There are tests for snapshots as well. So
Yeah,
that's the
NFS,
CSI only.
yeah, entry. Oh, there are tests for snapshots as well?
Yeah. So when this become alpha, then that's how, because that's actually CRD, right? So when this become alpha, then you can add those tests in tree, maybe to this location, or so it should be under E2E anyway.
Right.
Yeah, but for now, we just need to have those in a different place.
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't know if we should add it to Kubernetes directly. Okay,
No, not right now. I'm saying because right now you're not alpha, so you're not supposed to add that in there.
I see.
Once become alpha, you can. Yeah, so maybe next release when we're targeting alpha, then you can
So the
start.
thing
I
is,
think.
this is for entry providers, CSI providers.
No, the tests are actually, we have CSI driver tests also here.
Okay. No, I know.
Not entry.go, no, not entry.go, but under the folder, if you actually go to storage test suites, you can actually go to, maybe it's better just to go there. You can see the tests,
I see.
test suites. Yeah, so you see there are tests for snapshots, right? So there are many different tests here.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then the drivers, right now there are host pass driver, CSI host pass driver, and there's a GCPD CSI driver is also run,
A
and
TCPD.
also no GC
Oh,
Google's
GCPD.
GCPC,
I
yeah,
see. Yeah.
and also a CSI mock driver is also run.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what I was talking about when I said sample provisioner, like the equivalent of a CSI mock driver. Yeah, anything that we do in tree, I think we can add those in tree. I mean, anything that's a part of uh, uh, the Cozy project itself and not a part of some vendor driver. I think we can add tests here for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, moving forward. So third step is actually to go ahead and write the tests. So now we know where to put it. We'll have to plan out the development of actually writing the tests. I think to begin with, we'll just start with just the simplest use case, which will be to create a bucket. Actually, which will be to register a new provisioner, and we'll start iterating based on that. In terms of test infra, do we need to do anything to run E2E tests from our project? Like is it like before alpha, is there any way to run E2E tests?
Yeah. So yeah, because I'm not sure if this one should be there yet because this is provisional. So right now, I have to check on that because I think before this is alpha, you probably maybe it should not be there because once it's there, then actually it should be added under that KK E2E test folder, right? So so let me check on this one. So I'm not quite sure on
Okay.
this.
Okay, that makes sense. I think if we have that, we can accelerate development quite well, even before the KEP gets merged. So if we have the E2E test running, we can have more developers writing code, and we can be more confident in what's being contributed, and we can move faster. That's the main goal. um, I'll follow up with you, Shring, out of this on a I'll follow up with you separately about how to set up this test infra, or in case we can run it before Cap gets merged. That'll be good, or before alpha, I mean.
Yeah,
Oh,
I think should be able to set up tests. I'm just not sure if that should be added there yet. That's part that I need to figure out. That part I'm not sure.
I see. Can we run E2E tests without being in Kubernetes/Kubernetes?
You should be able to, but it's just, I think you just need to set up things yourself.
I see. Actually, that might be good enough, to be honest, to begin with at least. Just as a part of the CI process, just take the latest Kubernetes binary or something, and the latest commit from each of these projects, and put them together and run the E2E test. That I think that's a good start, if you ask me. That's possible, you're saying?
I'll need to check how exactly how to set that up, because so if we want to, I think I don't think it's possible to get everything like dynamically, because like for example the entry E2 test, we actually use images of the set, because it's not like you always get that from the master. It has to be like some image.
I see.
Yeah. Yeah, so I need to investigate
Yeah.
a little bit more on this one, how this would work.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we'll follow up on this, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
So as the next step, now that we have some clarity on the E2E tests, one thing I want to talk about is so this week, many of the comments that we've been getting on the CAP has been around the access, and I wanted to go over how we design the bucket access workflow once with everyone here, to clarify what we originally designed, and to keep everyone on the same page about this. So once a bucket is provisioned, the user that would like access to that bucket for their workload would create a bucket access request object, and the bucket access request object uh, will be will point to a bucket access class, and the bucket access class and the bucket access request are utilized by Cozy in order to create a bucket access. Now, going back to the bucket access class, the bucket access class has a policy actions config map, which is a config map which is a pointer to a config map which contains the access policy in a format that the provisioner understands. So this will be in AWS S3 IAM format if it is an S3 provisioner. For GCE, it'll have the equivalent of GCE's IAM, and for Azure, its version of the same thing. And the Cozy central controller will take the bucket access request and bucket access class and create the bucket access object. This bucket access object has fields from both, and it has an access secret name, which it first copies the data from the policy actions config map. So here it's actually a copy of the entire data rather than just a pointer, because it is possible that the policy actions config map changes, someone deletes it and creates a new one by that name. We want to make sure that this remains immutable during the life cycle of the bucket access. So it's copied over. Did anyone have any question?
I just have a comment. In the newest CAP, that's called minted secret name.
I see. Yeah.
This is a little bit older slide.
Yeah, so we can change that.
How do you assure the immutability of that data?
By copying it over. So at the point where we copy it, that's considered the source of truth. And since the data is copied over, and not just the name of the config map, whatever is here is never changed.
So the bucket access class is immutable as a whole?
Yes, bucket access class and the bucket access are immutable.
Good thing.
So bucket access is immutable in the sense we do allow the sidecar controller to update the minted secret name, because after the secret is minted, it has to be filled in inside of this. So the way we're doing it is we have an admission controller. The admission controller allows changing the minted secret name.
And
Now,
that's a once only change?
Sorry?
That's a once only change?
Yeah, only if it's empty, you're allowed to change it. You're allowed to set it.
Okay. So you can't overwrite it at a later time?
No.
Thank you.
So the name of the secret is going to be an auto-generated name, something like cozy dash or well, let's see, bucket access ba dash uuid, which is similar to how PVs which are auto-generated are named. So that will be filled in here, and whenever a pod requests a bucket, they would request it by specifying the bucket access request. We'll be able to follow through from here to the bucket access, and we will be able to see that the minted secret name is set to whatever, and we'll be able to download that data and then put it into the pod from that mint secret. Now, there is another way to provision access, which is through service accounts. So in certain cloud providers, it is possible to associate a workload to an identity in the cloud. So for instance, on Amazon, you can associate a service account, a Kubernetes service account, to an IAM user. Now, any pod that's using this service account will get authenticated as that IAM user when calling the AWS APIs. And what we do in that case, what Cozy does in that case is, if we want service account based authentication, what Cozy does is it takes the service account name as a part of the bucket access request, and in the workflow where it calls the provisioner to grant access to create credentials, it actually passes through the service account and uses and adds access for that specific bucket based on this policy actions config map. It grants access for that service account based on this policy actions config map. So any user or any workload that's using this service account will have access granted for this bucket of and access will be based on the policy that we've set.
Okay, so that policy map basically contains information that would be used to generate bucket policy that associates access to the created bucket for a particular role that service account is linked to.
So yeah, I don't know if role is the right word, but yes, overall, yes.
Right, because well, at least in the S3 implementation, what it does is it projects a JSON web token into the pod that, and the SDK then consumes that token and then generates a STS request using assume role with web identity, and
I see.
And then that's attested whether or not that particular service account effectively can assume a particular role.
Mhm.
And so then there's a role in the bucket policy. You can define roles as being as having the ability to access buckets or bucket prefixes. So
Right.
I guess that that config map data would just have some linkage that then the controller S3 IRSA compatible controller would then take those bits and set up that bucket policy on behalf of the creator.
Yes, that is exactly the way. Yeah.
Okay.
Sid, I'm sorry, could you please, I heard you mentioned you're going to mint something in the bucket access request, or we are going to require something in the bucket access request. Could you please provide more information on that, what exactly it's going to be?
So
Do you have an example of that?
There are two different workflows we discussed. One is by service account. The other is to actually mint credentials. Are you talking about the minting part?
I think I'm talking about the latter one, is the service accounts.
Okay, so you're asking what will need to be provided in the bucket access request?
That's right, yes.
The service account name and namespace needs to be provided.
I'm trying to think, like you mentioned, it's S3 use case, Amazon use case. Is that a generic use case, or it's Amazon use case? And again, like, question of portability is here as well. Like,
Yeah. So yeah, those are all good questions. So to first start with this associating this model of associating a service account to a particular identity, external identity, is common across all the cloud providers. GCE provides something like that, and Azure provides something like that. I believe DigitalOcean also does, but DigitalOcean also has a object storage service which is based on Ceph. Anyways, so yeah, that is a common setup. It is now talking about portability. When porting between two providers, two infrastructure providers that support this model, the service account based authentication model, the user would not have to change the bucket access request. The bucket access class, however, will have to reflect the config map will have to have the new format for whatever the new provider is, and yeah, so the bucket access request itself can remain as is. The admin who would have to create the bucket access class would have to make changes accordingly to whatever the provider requires.
So for example, like in Google Cloud Storage, you can write bucket policy, like you can do like web identity based access control, but it's usually at a course per bucket level, right? So the whatever the Google implementation of this, the policy config map would not have something, for example, like I guess the Amazon one could support in the policy actions config map. They could have like specific prefixes or something, right? Is that how that would work? If it was a controller specific property, it would be a special parameter in the config map. Like if you wanted to do a limit by prefix, that would be a parameter or something.
Yeah, so yeah, there would be controller specific, yes. So say in S3, the protocol signature looks, or prefix looks like S3:// whatever. On GC, we have its equivalent, whatever that is, GCS://, I think, prefix.
I still think I'm a little bit kind of concerned, like not concerned, but I don't understand the use case yet. Do we have that covered in the CAP? So I will probably, I won't waste our time like here. I will probably take a look at the CAP if it's covered there.
Oh, I think it's fair to, it's good to discuss it here as well. How it is in the CAP. It is under, I'll quickly even show you. So is this the latest one? No, this is not the latest. Give me a second.
I mean, I guess the fact that the name and the namespace is not part of the policy config map and instead kind of an abstraction that's supposed to like cross the different, like cut across all the different provisioners. Since it's kind of to the point to where the service, like the whole idea of mapping a servicer account and namespace to
Good.
the ability to access is not really like a controller specific thing. I mean, I guess not every controller would necessarily be able to provide those capabilities, but that's true in CSI too, right? There's parts of the spec that are implemented by certain controllers.
Yeah. I think in terms of having this ability, it really depends on the infrastructure providing a service account based, like a mechanism like STS to associate a service account to a workload.
Can I ask how large we expect these config maps to be in practice, and if the spec puts any size limit on them?
So these config maps are simply just IAM policy rules. Like for S3 IAM.
Because they're part of the class, they're going to be coming from an administrator, right?
Yeah,
so
it'll look like that.
With the hierarchy, or
so this will just have the policy. Now it'll be up to the controller to set the policy for the bucket specifically.
Well, but I mean, like this is a JSON blob, and a config map is just a string.
Right. So this will be either escape JSON or base64 JSON.
Okay, so it'll be encoded and just shoved in as a blob essentially.
Yeah.
Okay, I only bring this up because in CSI that they do have explicit limits on string lengths and map sizes to avoid people from trying to shove like a megabyte of text into a string somewhere and then expect the other side to just be able to store something of that size. So this is getting to the size where it's like you might want to put an upper bound on it so that we don't have to deal with like policies that are megabytes in size.
What's the issue with megabyte size policies?
Well, they end up getting stored in Kubernetes objects, in Kubernetes API server on the etcd database. And if you're
we run that risk regardless, don't we? Like if someone wants to create megabyte size config maps, the same problem would exist, wouldn't it?
Potentially, yeah. I'm just like CSI took the step of putting a limit on things to avoid objects getting huge. I think the concern there was that the drivers could return data back that could end up getting enormous, and they wanted to prevent that. Here it would have to be the administrator deciding to put an enormous amount of data in, but it's just something to think about.
Yeah, I think I think putting it on the administrator and expecting them to know the limit is fair. And I don't see these policies getting insanely large, to be honest. Like a megabyte sized JSON file will have probably 10,000 lines or more, probably even more, 50,000 lines.
Yeah. There's probably AWS, like there's probably, and the same is probably true for Google, but there's probably like limits at the IAM and whatever that Google equivalent is API level around the size of those. So I mean, if we found what those were, and we could still set an upper bound on it based on, right? Because it's not useful to be able to have unbounded config maps or whatever if we know that the IAM or the Google policy or whatever are only going to be like at the most 64K or something like that. I don't know.
Right.
I'm only pointing it out because if we leave it unspecified in the spec, it could come back to bite us later when someone does something we don't we don't think is reasonable.
I think the only challenge would be like how well HCD can handle the scale, wouldn't it?
Possibly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think yeah, let's think about it. I'll do some research on if there are any limits for all the cloud providers, and we'll go from there. I'll add that as a thing I'll need to get back on.
This whole policy recap thing, and I probably missed this, is only for like newly minted buckets, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
that is correct. Newly minted.
And we need this this level of details because we believe that it's not possible to model this as kind of roles like read role, write role, and something more kind of simple than that.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, it is a lot more complicated than simply just read write. There is also differences between the different cloud providers, and trying to abstract it is going to probably limit what people can do rather than help us more.
Okay.
Okay, so that's basically that's all is at a high level. That's all are the two steps. Now, are there any other questions you have? Okay, so Jeff, did you have something to ask about the service account based provisioning? Because I remember we left off our conversation midway.
No, the question I have, I think I understand it. It was for a bucket access, the bucket access request, which is a user created instance, has the service account as an optional field. And my concern was that there might be a security gap where the user does not fill in the service account name, but the admin has a config map representing some access policy, and I'm not sure that, and the driver has the ability to mint credentials. And I wanted to make sure we don't have a case where we can grant access to a bucket when we shouldn't.
And don't we take care of that by the allowed namespaces?
Right. So it turns out the answer was a little bit inobvious to me, and I've written a lot of the KEP, but I forgot this, that to request access to a bucket, you need a BR as well as the BAR, and the bucket request is needed. And in the bucket request, it has to reference a bucket class, although we've gone back and forth about whether a bucket request has to reference a bucket class in the case of brownfield. But if it does, then bucket class has allowed namespaces, and that's a way for an admin to control it. If brownfield bucket request does not need to reference a bucket class, then we still don't have a way.
No, that's not true. So we do actually, because a bucket request always needs to represent a bucket. Bucket class is copied over to the bucket. So the allowed namespaces list, I mean. So if you
in brownfield, it's not. The brownfield bucket instance is created by the admin, and I know we've talked. I'm not sure it's been reflected in KEP drafts, but we've talked about a bucket class not being required for brownfield, and that what would be the point of the admin creating a bucket class when they're filling in all those fields in the bucket instance anyway.
No, again, so a bucket class is not required in the bucket request for static brownfield. However, the allowed namespaces needs to be filled in by the admin in the bucket object itself. In a static brownfield provisioning case, the admin creates the bucket object, and that bucket object should have allowed namespaces filled in so that Cozy can allow it to be copied across all the allowed namespaces.
Yeah, I agree, Sid. It was just confusing to me and a little bit indirect, but I think that works.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we should capture this in the KEP so it's clear for everyone.
Yeah, I think so.
Is there any other questions? All right, so thank you everyone. We can end the meeting now. On Monday, I'll get back with that size limit question, and please review the KEP once. The review process is really helping. We have, clarified a few things. We've learned a few things. So please keep that up, and yeah, I'll look forward to any reviews you have, and I'll see you all again on Monday.